Hi Heather, it's good to see you again. So obviously we've met each other before and we're part of the Staff Network, but so just give me a little bit of information about yourself.
So I'm Heather. I'm 29, believe it or not. I'm trans, and I have been working at university for about 5 years now, about 2 or 3 of which have been openly as a trans woman.
Oh, okay. And so just to elaborate, so I'm Craig, so I'm the pronouns are he, him. I'm the co-chair of the LGBTQIA+ Staff Network. So hopefully the network's been a supportive mechanism for you over the years. But yeah, just give me a bit of information about, like, so you've been here for 5 years and you say 3 of those are out and trans?
Yeah.
So what's been your experience
Sorry,
so far with...
I just realised I forgot to say pronouns.
Okay.
She, her, she. I'm a good ally. So yeah, it's basically I joined university. Well, actually, I used to study here.
Oh, okay.
And I did politics, which is now been merged with international relations, so that's this whole thing. And yeah, I joined here working on Jubilee campus, and I was an apprentice and did not realise I was trans, still working as my old self.
Oh, okay.
And then I joined the Student Recruitment Support Hub, which is on Kingsmeadow campus, which is the campus nobody knows about. And when I was there, about 4 or 5 months after I joined, I realised, hey, guess what, you're trans, and that was a whole thing.
Oh, okay.
So, I think, it was a long journey for me, realising that I was trans, accepting it. But the nice thing was that, I work at a university, and universities are, generally speaking, pretty supportive of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that was an immediate relief. Well, I realised I was trans about 4 years ago, basically.
Yeah.
So I came out about 2 years ago. So it hasn't been that long, but before I realised I was trans, which happened when I was Googling, like, hey, how do trans people realise they were trans? Just hoping to educate myself.
Yeah.
And then realising that, oh no, this is me. I knew something was wrong. I knew I was unhappy with myself, but I didn't really understand what.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think there's this assumption where it's like all trans people know who they are from birth. They're always like, oh, I played with dolls when I was like 4, but that never happened to me. I think in retrospect, there's things you look at yourself where it's like, oh yeah, I never liked sports. I never, I always felt weirdly jealous, like, women in TV and in the playground, and I never quite identified with this like male thing. And it's like in of themselves, you don't want to be, I guess, deterministic, right? It's like boys do this, girls do this.
Yeah.
But like they kind of snowball together, and then you realise that like, oh yeah, like experimenting with like female presentation like 10 years ago wasn't just some weird like response to negative event. It was like you trying to discover your transness, but you didn't understand it at the time.
Yeah.
And you didn't understand what like gender dysphoria was. When you looked at yourself in the mirror and you hated what you looked like that didn't mean you weren't trans. That just meant you were experiencing gender dysphoria, which means you are. It's like you get jealous of like the queer youth as well when I see like trans students. It's like, yeah, I joined a university and I'm transitioning already. It's like, I hate you, but also I'm happy for you, but I'm so jealous. But if I come out as trans at like 2005, that would have been a terrible decision because you saw reality shows at that time. So there's been a lot of change, and while on the one hand I'm seemingly jealous of all these like students who are able to present and be comfortable with who they are, I'm also very happy that change has happened.
Yeah,
so,
and you're part of that change. So be very,
the grand old elder queer of 29 years old. Yeah.
And was all the support there for you to access, or did you have to like really search for it, or ask colleagues, and were colleagues supportive in helping you get to that support?
Well, I felt a bit bad because my manager was quite new at the time at being a manager, and then I was like, hey, guess what, I'm trans. And she was like, okay. And she had to spend some time looking up the transgender policy at university, and then sent it over to me, and it turns out very detailed. So yeah, I was really impressed. There's things like, if I needed like transforming care or something like that, university will give you time off for it. They had this big explanation about like pronouns, things like that. So that was really affirming. It was like, oh, you get this. Again, being on the kind of isolated campus, it's kind of the one that's been a bit forgot about. So for example, like on University Park, like right up there, there's like the progress flag on the road, which is very nice, and there's a gender neutral toilets and things like that. At Kingsmeadow campus, there's like a former ITV TV studio, and the architecture reflects that, and so we don't have any gender neutral toilets or anything like that, and it was a bit like, so because this was under COVID, I was like, when I come back to work as a trans woman who's not on hormones yet, where do I go to the toilet?
Okay.
because my bladder's very small,
Yeah.
and I couldn't, I drink a lot of coffee, and I need someone to go. So that was that whole thing I hadn't really considered, and it would have maybe been nicer if we had like the brand spanking new gender neutral toilets, which they have on University Park. And part of my job in admissions is that I process admissions, surprisingly enough, applications. And one thing that I didn't realise is that it was very easy to change my email to Heather Nelson. But internally, my username, which is like, basically it sort of tracks changes made to applications. So like say if someone gets accepted for the wrong reason, they can find out who did it and go, what are you doing? So at each stage of the application, like your name is on there. The thing I didn't realise for several years is that like my old name was on there.
Oh, okay.
And so all these people in the admissions department could blatantly see my old name, and it just hadn't really been addressed. And I had to like, it wasn't until a couple of years afterwards I had to like, someone let me know, and I was like, oh no. So
And how was that feeling, knowing that the system was not aligning to who you truly are?
I think like, the thing is, well, a lot of these things, like, it's not malicious, but it's kind of, it would have been nice to have been considered.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like even my email, like the long one is like heather.nelson@nottingham, which is just my name, which was nice. But there's like a shorter version, which is just like several letters, and it's quite obvious to see that like that some of them reflect your name.
Yeah.
And my short email, like reflects my old name, and like you can't see it, but like it's just a few things that would, like, it's kind of that balance between like it would be nice if you could change it, but also I respect that technology has its limits.
With pronouns and neutralised language, is it, are you constantly on the back foot thinking of this every day? Is it or is it a forefront of your mind, thinking, this will be addressed, or this will be said to me and I've got to address this, or do you find a way to address it? Is it difficult?
Is it people asking your pronouns?
Yeah, or misgendering, or going how you present. Is it difficult in that sense?
It can be.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I saw a rash of people being like putting their pronouns in their email bios, and I didn't do it for a long while, but excuse me, eventually I just got so sick of being misgendered over the phone or what have you, I just put it in my bio.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is becoming too much of a problem. Like, one issue can be like new colleagues into the team. Like, it wasn't too bad when I first came out because everyone knew who I was beforehand.
Yeah.
And so they were universally accepting of it, which was lovely. But as new people come in, and as like I've joined other teams, you get increasingly scared. Like, what if like someone who doesn't like who I am joins the team?
Yeah.
And so every time someone joins, it is a bit of a like, are they going to be okay with this? Am I going to be the first trans person they've met? Hopefully not. But it's like, I'm trans, I know I'm trans, I know you know I'm trans, but are we going to acknowledge it?
Yeah.
Sometimes I just kind of acknowledge it, right? It's like, I think once it was like, you just kind of acknowledge it like a jokey way, basically, right? It's like, oh yeah,
And is that your way of dealing with things, and has that worked for you in getting people to sort of be open with you and ask questions? And
like, sometimes it's that awkward balance between like, I know you have questions.
Yeah.
I'm fine with answering it, but also socially, it's really weird if you just bring this up, right? It's like, so are you getting a surgery? It's like, no one's done that, but it's not the thing you want to be asked in a workplace unless I know you very well. So sometimes we will just kind of acknowledge it, like, I might be like, yeah, I'm heading off early. I need to go to the GP to get my estrogen supplements or something like that. And so just kind of acknowledging it in conversation. It's like, yes, I am trans.
yeah.
Like, yes, I'm okay with speaking about it to a degree, just don't be weird about it. When I came out, this was during COVID, and kind of as to what you were saying, I did like a preemptive FAQ on Teams.
Oh, okay.
Where it was like, I know you have questions, that you want to ask what my pronouns are, what I think about certain issues, etc. Like, what are you going to do about your deep voice, about the facial hair? And I tried to like preemptively answer it because I knew they would wonder, and I just kind of wanted to address it ahead of time.
Yeah.
So.
And with other trans colleagues, do you find it's specific to the person on how they address that situation, or do you find that some people are like reverted or introverted with it?
So I've only known 2 trans colleagues. One of whom, he left before I came out. I did message them and I asked them like, hey, how was it? And they were quite supportive, so that was nice.
Oh, that's
and the other at the time was messaged me with a supportive message saying, "Hey, this is very good. I plan to come out eventually," and from what I understand, they later did, so that was great.
So in terms of so support, so obviously the staff network is there. How has that been? Because obviously I've been interim, just over a year now as co-chair, and yeah, how's that been as a support mechanism for staff and being out with other colleagues from all different protective characteristics? Has that been a beneficial asset to have?
Yeah, it has been. It's nice, like, even if, again, because I'm quite isolated, I'm on a little, like, island campus in Kingsmeadow, separated by the motorway. But it is nice knowing that, oh, there's other people like me.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they're not in my office as far as I know, but, like, I'm not the first. You know, I'm not, I'm the universe. There are people who are like me, who are in like higher positions than I am, and that's quite reassuring.
Yeah.
You know, like when I passed a job interview as like a trans woman, like presenting, and that felt really good. And part of that was knowing that like I'm not the first, and hopefully won't be the last either. But so it is reassuring.
Following on from that, do you feel that being an out trans woman that that you have to be that that visual identity for people to go to sort of to look up to and think, oh, actually, yeah, there are people like me that
Craig,
that I can
absolutely,
aspire to.
yeah, that is the single biggest, because like the thing you realize is that anything you do, like, it's not just you. You know, as someone who used to live as like, you know, acted as like a cis straight white man, like, you know, anything I did just reflected on me.
Yeah.
But now it's like, as a trans person, anything I do, good or bad, reflects on all trans people. And you very quickly realize this, and it does put quite a bit of pressure on you.
Yeah.
You know, you become like the office, at least in my place, the office trans person. So people can ask you questions on occasion, or like something happens in the news regarding trans people, they might ask you about it.
I mean, does that feel quite nice that people can go to you and ask questions and learn, or have you found that the questions have been kind of negative and it's or disagreement to or agreement to what's gone off in the media? Or?
I think the office I work in is quite young, and so I think younger people are more understanding of trans issues. So that's been fine.
Yeah.
But I would be afraid of, for example, like joining a more senior office and talking with people there who are maybe not as educated in trans issues. This is also potentially an issue with international teams.
Yeah.
And basically one thing that I was meant to mention was I had been planning to work with this national team before I came out. And then I realized that, among other things, like as a trans woman, you can't really go to like some countries and represent university just for like matters of safety. And so that has been a big sacrifice. You know, I'm still glad I came out as trans, but you know, you realize that, for example, like, let's say we're talking with international colleagues from certain areas of the world, they might not understand trans issues, and they don't mean to be offensive, but they might say certain things or treat you as a certain way that might be very tricky to deal with. So
so just going on to words that are used within the community. I noticed you said queer a few times there, and I absolutely love the fact that we've taken that back as a positive.
Yeah.
And it's become this like, well, I mean, I don't call myself queer because I always think of it as the young edgy community, which I don't feel that I am. Yeah. But I love that we've just taken that back, and it's not representative to one characteristic within our community. It's like it's a broad representation. Mm-hmm. What are there any words that you really cling on to or really really like, and words that you don't actually? Yeah. That
I like queer because I read a webcomic by an artist called Erica Mo, and she described it as kind of a very handy thing because, like, as someone who doesn't always know what I'm attracted to, you know, it's nice to be like, yeah, I'm not straight.
Yeah. And
obviously you appreciate that queer has this long history of being a slur, etc. But as you said, it's really nice that it's been reclaimed as something positive.
Yeah.
So I can be like, yeah, I'm queer, and people know what I mean. And you know, the university as well is quite supportive of that. They're not like, you are gay, you are straight, you are bisexual. It's like, you know, you can, if you kind of feel comfortable like being part of the LGBT scene, you know, they're accepting of it, which it's nice not being put to little boxes. Yeah, so I generally call myself trans. I don't really like the term, but just personally, I'm not hugely fond of like trans woman or transgender. Not out of any ideological reason, but they just feel weird.
Yeah.
You know, I just like trans because it's nice and short.
Yeah.
It has a good mouthfeel. Like, So that's why I picked that one. And I go, hi, I'm Heather, I'm trans. It's short, it's snappy, has good marketing appeal, I guess. And so that's why I like to use trans.
Yeah.
I like to use queer as well.
It's because transgender is kind of come by the wayside, and that's become kind of a negative connotation, hasn't it? Within, I think, some aspects of the community where using the word transgender is not a positive outcome.
It's not like, say, transvestite, which is like an outdated term.
Yeah.
I think transgender it's quite academic.
Yeah.
It's a bit clinical. Like, if it's like transgender studies, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But I think, I wouldn't describe myself as like, you wouldn't describe yourself as like heterosexual, generally speaking.
Yeah.
You would say straight. And in the same way, I wouldn't call myself transgender. I would say I'm trans. And it's pretty obvious, like I'm trans femme. So.
And are you fearful of? Because I mean, there's always going to be mistakes that happen. Like, I not all the time, but you misgender people or you can say the wrong pronouns. But the ability to sort of apologise or reflect that and then fix it is really key within the community and outside. Are you fearful of making mistakes? I mean, do you come across that and do you learn quite quickly from?
Yeah, on occasion, like I saw there was a recent university thing regarding some students and it had like their pronouns and they were like, some of them were just like, he, him, she, her, some of it was like all pronouns and like, even when I was in university only like barely a decade ago, that wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
And so I don't really work student facing, but there is something in my mind where I'm like, yes, you are trans, but you're not immune to criticism. So, if you are talking with these students, like, would you get it right? Again, as I said earlier, like, I'm not used to like the whole what are your pronouns thing, but I know for some students here, like, that's just normal to them.
Yeah.
And so I guess I think if I was speaking to students, I'd probably have to do a bit of research, be like, okay, what is normal among the teens?
Yeah. Yeah, what are your feelings on kind of really just neutralising the whole language and not genderising?
I think so. It depends. I think probably the best solution is to have your pronouns somewhere. Like it is, again, as someone who previously wasn't a huge fan of it, it is nice just having it in the email, just so I know who it is. Like one way that kind of that whole works with what you were saying is when we deal with international applicants, and like if they're from like a culture we're not super familiar with, and we have no clue how to gender their name, it is very handy just being like they, them. And so I use that a lot in emails, where it's just like, they have been successful in their computer science.
That person, and it's it just feels nice that we're not sort of pushing people into these boxes even before we see them or before we know them. It's kind of that feels quite nice to me.
And it's inclusive like the non-binary people, and I'm not non-binary, but this is the thing I realised, by the way. As a trans woman, I know nothing about non-binary people. I just assumed I would, foolishly. They have their own struggles and what have you, and it's something that like I'm still learning about as well. It's like I just assumed I would get it. And it's like, well, we're both like not on the gender binary, right? I mean, it's going to be the same thing. No, just because you're in the LGBT community, it doesn't necessarily mean I know everything.
No, and I think that's the assumption from outside the community. It's like, oh, you're part of this, you should know everything. It's like, well,
no, I've been out as trans for like 3 or 4 years now, and I'm still learning like how to do makeup. People will ask you a lot about like how the transition works, how like certain medical procedures work, and I was like, I don't know. I just Wikipedia these things.
Yeah.
So kind of. The nice thing about having young colleagues is that generally they understand you roughly, like especially the younger ones. They're very accepting of it. And I'm just like, where were you 10 years ago? But also, like it's been nice. Well, like in the early stages, like when I came out on Teams, a lot of them they messaged me with like, hey, if you need any advice in makeup or things like that. Even ones I barely knew. That was really sweet.
Oh.
Like a lot of them supported my transition announcement, and it's been nice sharing things like, hey, guess I got on hormones, it's me. Or like, guess who started laser hair removal. And like simultaneously I'm kind of educating them a little bit sometimes, but also it's like, hey, this thing that means a lot to me happens, and it's nice being able to like share that transition. When it's like, hey, I passed it the first time, or like, hey, I tried this makeup thing the first time, well, look at this dress. And I showed, like, when I came in with this gnome dress, I was like, look at it, and I spin it around, and everyone made a big fuss, and I was like, thank you.
Oh, that's good. And do you have anything like that outside of work as well as like, because we spend so much time at work, so I'm just so pleased to hear that your department is being so supportive of.
Yeah, I have from friend groups. I have some friends like, one's like super into squirrels, so like we went to go see like a squirrel enclosure in a zoo, and I got to like dress up for that, and it was nice. They've just been very broadly supportive of that as well.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of nice having that social groups both outside and also in university. I should probably also say, by the way, I met these people in university as colleagues, so that's been nice.
Yeah.
I think as well, like, it's nice that I kind of feel that like I'm being treated as a relative equal.
Yeah.
Like there are all the issues like with the international stuff that I mentioned earlier, but for example, let's say there's a disagreement in the workplace, like I don't feel like I'm being patronized.
Yeah.
They will like, they're not like, oh, was it your hormones or like that? They'll just be like, Heather, you idiot, you got this wrong. And I'll be like, thank you. Like, for example, one thing that I have to consider a lot is like, is my makeup all right? Like, am I dressed appropriately? Like, these are things that like cis women have had so long to figure out, and it kind of sucks that we have these demands on women, but nonetheless, they have discovered these things, and yet, there's been times I've come into university and I realize I'm not dressed properly at all. And they had these like, this, they figured this out when they were like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in my late 20s and I just figured this things out. Like, oh, I should not have brought this dress in, it does not fit, etc. And so, as a trans woman, we generally will not always dress as well as cis women because we're still figuring these things out.
Yeah. And I guess your bodies are through the transition, your bodies are changed as well, so you're never, it's kind of that must be quite a challenge.
Yeah, like I brought in a coat and then rapidly realised it was a terrible decision because like it didn't go well with the scarf at all, and these are things I just didn't have to care about when I was cis, and then it was like as I transitioned I was like, oh, I have to like buy an entire new wardrobe, and so for like 6 months I was coming in with 2 dresses because they were the only ones that I thought were alright, and it took me a while to get more confident to wear other things. I think like as well, even like coming into work is a bit of a worry, at times if it's like, walking back from work at night is scarier now.
Yeah.
It's like I have to do it by myself, and it's like nothing's bad's happened yet, but like people treat you differently, and you realise that like you're not, previously I didn't care, but now like you stand out. Sometimes it's just like you will have meetings with like elder colleagues. It's something I kind of touched on earlier, and it's like, are they going to understand I'm trans? I'm going to have to like put makeup on, etc. When previously I could just come on with whatever. Now it's like potentially you could be the first trans person I've ever met.
Yeah.
And if you set a bad impression, that might affect their view of all trans people. So there are like certain things that like when I was cis didn't have to worry about, but now it's like, is my makeup okay? I have dry skin. Has it like wrinkled?
Yeah.
And that's happened a few times. And like, or this colleague, like, what political beliefs do they hold? Like, am I dressed appropriately? Like, are my hormones going to affect the way I think? Like, there's a lot of things I have to consider. I think some of it, again, it's been nice just having colleagues who support me. Yeah. And again, it's not just like being super positive no matter what. They, they're just nice in guiding me and just saying, hey, like, you could do this with your hair, or like, it's nice if like they can just be, I guess if we kind of ask for advice, it's nice if you give it, or if we're talking about clothes, feel free to give it, but maybe don't preemptively be like, hey, this is how you use mascara, and it's like, thanks for telling me my mascara looks awful, thank you, but, it's nice as well if like they point out, hey, your skin looks smoother, like, sometimes I'm not entirely sure I'm telling the truth, but sometimes it's just like, yes, it's coming along, or like, wow, you look really nice today, it's like, thank you, and, just asking about small things, like, if I was wearing like this badge, for example, but like pointing it out and being like, hey, nice badge, I'm like, thank you, and then I get to talk about like what I've been doing.
Yeah.
And, I think as well, like, it's nice if they're just broadly aware of trans. You don't need to be an expert. We're not expecting you to be like a full like trans rights like activist or anything. But if you just understand that like, hey, hormones can affect your mood, or like being trans sometimes isn't great, or like, but sometimes it's really good. Just understanding that like there are certain things we have to overcome is nice, and it's nice if we're not having a great day. Just understanding it might be due to the fact that the transition is not going super well, and things like that. Yeah, if I could just be like, yeah, I'm just having a rough day, like I looked in the mirror and my makeup wasn't great, and just like getting it, I'm not like inquiring, is a nice thing to do.
Oh, that's good.
When I came out, this was still like right in the midst of COVID, so we were still working from home at this point. And I remember like I had some Teams meeting where I was like, hey, guess who's trans? It's me. And then like the big thing I remember is like the first meeting I had afterwards, again, still over Teams.
Yeah.
I tried to put some makeup on. I've been doing a bit of makeup all the time, and I looked terrible. And no one pointed it out, but it just really affected my, like, previously I didn't care because I was presenting as male, so I knew I looked bad, but I was like, I don't care because, but then trying to like present as femme and then kind of failing was rough. I ruined the whole day, and but over time I got a bit more confident with makeup, and by the end of lockdown I was like doing it more often, and I was starting to wear some feminine clothing. But when we went back to the office a couple of years ago, I didn't wear dresses because I was not confident. I wore a blouse and like dark trousers because it was vaguely androgynous.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, this is as much as I want to get away with because I don't think I can get away with dresses. It's only been about a year or so where I finally felt confident being like, yeah, I don't look perfect, but like my hair's okay, my makeup's okay. The hormones are kicking in a bit. I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna wear a dress. And then just one day, like last year, I just did it. As I've worn dresses and as I've worn slightly more, not daring, but just like more, I guess, flashy outfits, like I have little dinosaur earrings, or it might just be certain jewelry.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I'm able to do it in the workplace, not just around my friends, has been really liberating. Like I could be like, oh, we got like a big team meeting, I'm gonna wear such and such, and it's just nice.
Yeah.
Because it means I can show my colleagues, and I know my colleagues will react positively to it. And so it's very nice having a supportive environment where it's like, you're not going to be weird about it.
Yeah.
You're not going to make weird comments or anything like that. You're just going to treat me as like I'm a cis woman who happens to be wearing a nice outfit, and I get to do the same with other colleagues as well.
It sounds like they're on this journey with you, which it's been a positive mechanism in bringing your true self to work.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm just really pleased that this team is like really supportive of you, and it's allowing you to continue within university and bring your, develop and learn, and find your style and who you are.
To be honest, there's like another practical reason why I wear dresses, and that's because I get misgendered less. It's lovely with the team when they do so, but like there was a time, a few weeks ago where I was in a blouse, and I was in the queue getting coffee, and then like some person who worked at university was like, oh, I'll just let this sir in, this guy in, and I was like, okay.
Oh.
It was nice afterwards because like my manager was there and she was like constantly referring to me like, yeah, she's in line. And so it was very nice her being supportive, and she brought it up later in the meeting. I was making sure I was okay.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's really affirming that they've addressed that. That was obviously a good feeling and felt positive. Was that through, has this person had any training with this, or is it just, does it come naturally to other people, do you think? Or is this just through knowing you and how you've educated them and going through this journey with you?
I don't think they had any training. I just think they were kind of cool. Like they just kind of got it, and I was like, thank you. It's like they're not making some big conceited effort to like be visible as like a trans ally. I would hate that. Like, if they tried to like, if they were weird about it, let's say, that would be obnoxious as well. But if they just kind of like acknowledge it and like treat me as like, among other things, I am trans.
Yeah.
I am also big into, certain kinds of fiction. I like reading, I like traveling, etc. Blah, blah, blah. And among other things, I'm trans.
Yeah.
Like, it was nice of them to acknowledge it when needed, but also they don't like constantly bring it up. I am a trans woman. Like, I'm going to bring it up sometimes, but it's not my sole identity. Like, I was considering, like, do I have like a trans flag on my desk? And I was like, no, I don't need to. Like, I could have like a plant instead and talk about the plant.
Yeah.
And so it's nice when knowing I can bring these things up, but
Yeah.
also like, they're not going to just obsess over it. Here's Heather, she is the comp sci person, and just she deals with such and such. So it's like, yes, I'm a member of this team. I'm not the diversity hire. I'm actually doing something. It's been a sacrifice, and I think they don't always realize that, like, it's been a long journey, and because I'm professional, I'm not going to go on about it with my colleagues constantly. Like, I could be like, I nearly had an emotional breakdown because my hormones were like prescribed wrong, but I can't do that because it would be weird around my colleagues. To be trans, I think, like, sometimes it's awful, sometimes it's really nice. I'm just used to it at this point.
Yeah.
Just understanding that, like, I've made a lot of sacrifices to be trans, but also it's not the worst thing in the world, and like, I'm very, very glad I transitioned.
Do you think there's any shift in focus from the community within, how we're moving forward, and because I've been speaking to a lot of younger students who their coming out stories have been, not to take anything away from them, but been easier from people that I've known 20 years ago or so. It's been kind of different. Do you feel we're on the right track to sort of it be less of a focus of coming out or transitioning and
It's interesting because like you think at university with like, you know, as a constant focus on like, you know, I think you know, we're in like the LGBT History Month, etc. Like, so you kind of expect at university there's going to be lots of trans people. To my knowledge, like I'm the only one in my like definitely department, probably campus, as far as I know. There could be others. So you kind of expect there would be more, you know, but also there's not much university could do about that. I think like I'm pretty open. It's like, again, you kind of start by being a bit self-aware about it. You know, you start by like, you start being like kind of, hey, I'm trans, among other things. You know, you talk about your, I sometimes mention it casually, like, yeah, I'm heading off because I've got laser hair removal. And sometimes people ask questions about it and they're always like, oh, do you mind me asking about it? And I'm like, yeah, I'm actually perfectly happy to talk about it. I really like doing it. So I think sometimes I don't always want to discuss it. I appreciate people aren't weird about it. But sometimes you do have to be like, hey, like, you know, before I was trans, I did such and such, or, you know, I can't post a picture of myself from 5 years ago because I look like not as I do now. I guess the thing I would say is that, like, being, like, an open trans woman, being a visible trans woman, like, whether you like it or not, you become an activist. And, like, as someone who was not an activist beforehand, like, you are the representative of, like, trans rights in your department, whether you want to be or not. And so there always is that bit of pressure, right? It's like, again, as far as I know, I'm the only trans person a lot of people know. And so there is pressure where it's like, you know, I need to present well, I need to, like, be quite eloquent, you know, I need to be, like, informed on political issues because people ask you about things, and I'll be like, I don't know. So people will, but at the same time, you appreciate people are curious. And whether you like it or not, they're gonna have questions, and I don't mind answering them. Really.
But we can set our own boundaries. Everybody can set their own boundaries of what's being confident in who you are and comfortable in your own skin is. You can say, you step in the mark there, and this is work environment, so
it's never happened. I should say that's never happened. No. I've never had people go like, "So, have you got the surgery?" It's like, thankfully, no. It is a fear, but to date, all my colleagues have been understanding of it. The thing you get used to is repeating your transition story over and over. Basically, you know, at the start, I was like, well, I figured out I was trans through such and such, and then I guess hormones did this. But as you get to know people, as like, you know, you switch roles or you meet new people, like, you do kind of get this like elevator pitch for like your transition. I was just
going to say elevator pitch.
Escalate, but even like, you know, you do have to like summarize everything down to like 5 minutes because you know eventually it's going to come up and you're like, yeah, I'm trans. I figured it out about 4 or 5 years ago. I came out at such a date. I started hormones this date. After I came out to my team, I realized there were like certain colleagues who didn't work in my team, but I was like communicating with intermittently. And at the start, I would like send them an email being like, hi, by the way, I'm trans. Let me know if you have any questions. And by the end of it, they were like 6 months in, I would have like important questions for the teams. And I would just be like, hi, such and such. A, I'm trans. B, important question. Because I was just like, I don't have time to explain transition. I need to ask you about this applicant. This is very important. So that was something I had to consider because they'd be like, who's Heather Nelson? That sounds a lot like the other person. So you do. You know, thankfully, none of them were weird about it, but you did have to consider it was like, oh yeah, this person knew me as my old self.
Oh, I see, yes.
The FAQ that I did had 30 questions in it that I could just think of. It was stuff like, will you get offended if I have Harry Potter merchandise on my desk? Or like, you know, are you going to be using the women's toilets? Things like that. It was, you know, you realise that, like, you know, obviously things like, how does sex and gender work for me is pretty obvious, but for not everyone. And so you do realize you have to like summarize into these little sound bites. And you do have to kind of like change it according to like your audience. Like, you know, I've spoken to like people from China, and you just learn about like Chinese trans celebrities, and you're like, well, you know, this celebrity, there's like a talk show host, there's like a trans woman. It's like, well, I'm like her. Or sometimes it's like, no, I'm not a drag queen, that's a different thing. You know, because they see RuPaul's Drag Race and they're like, oh, that's you. It's like, no, yeah, you're not offended. That's just a frame of reference. But.
Yeah. So Heather, thank you very much for your time today and coming to meet us on the bench. The sun is now setting, but it feels like we've been here for hours chatting away. It's been lovely to chat to you personally, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you for letting me meet your dog. And I was sat here on this bench perfectly peacefully, but I do appreciate being interviewed. I don't know who you want to drink out. No, thank you for the coffee, and it's been lovely to talk about trans issues.